Hi, I'm that gay character whose life is nothing but a sea of depression and darkness, Leo, and welcome to In Bed with a BL. So I just actually came from the movie theater to watch this movie. So I'm gonna be talking really, really fast, and I'm also kind of like emotionally dead on the inside because this movie, I'll talk about later, hit me like a ton of bricks. Um, like left, right, haymaker, uppercut, finish in Mortal Kombat style. So today we're gonna cover a movie called Dear Tenant. It's a Taiwanese movie that came out this year, and it's set in Geelong, which is actually a place where I live right now, which was really, really cool. Personally, I've never seen a movie that was shot so close to where I live. I used to live in Boston, and Ted with Mark Wahlberg was in Boston, but the places they went to were very generic, and everyone has seen them in movies, TV shows, so it didn't feel that special. But in Dear Tenant, I actually saw my street and places where I work and places I go very often, so it felt like weirdly familiar for a movie that is spoken in a language I don't really speak that well and a country I've only lived in for a little over a year. So it was super weird and actually kind of made me go really excited. And I was in the crowd watching it in the movie theater, and other people kind of got excited too when it was in a place that they knew. So feeling that energy in theaters is actually like a really cool new thing for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Dear Tenant was actually able to take 3 awards in the Golden Horse ceremony this year too, which is super cool. So not only was your name engraved herein there and nominated for many awards, but this movie actually took awards for great acting and other things like that. So this is becoming a really good year for gay movies. But you could tell this is kind of almost like an Oscar movie. It's very sad. It's well acted and just it's pure depression. It's sad. It's just a sad movie. So going into this, I'm not sure how it will be televised or how people are reading or finding out about this movie. I did not personally know that much going in, but I could tell you know his boyfriend is dead before you see the movie. That shouldn't be a spoiler. And there's going to be a situation with him and the child, and there's cops. But that was all I knew, and I kind of thought this was going to be closer to Fathers, which is a Thai movie where two gay men adopt a child, and then there's all those problems with it. And I'll talk about that later because that's also a really good movie, which is pretty bittersweet. This was kind of like that, but also very in the same vein as My Dear Ex, which is also a great Taiwanese gay movie. It is on Netflix. You should be able to find it in most countries too. I highly recommend that one. But it's also in the same vein of like it's really depressing. Um, that one is kind of like in a really good way. Like it's like mm, it's really hard to explain. I don't know if other people experience this, but sometimes when I watch a gay movie, I look for a specific type of like melancholy, and My Dear Ex really was able to give that to you. It's just like this humdrum, depressing feel where you're like, oh, I relish in this sadness. Uh, Maybe it's just like a sad gay man problem, and other people don't feel it. Who knows? But getting back to Dear Tenant. So this review might contain some spoilers to the movie. The movie style that is presented here is a very slow burn, and you learn more and more about the characters and what is actually going on as the movie progresses. I will try to be as vague as possible, but there are situations where I might slip up a little bit, but I'll try my best to mark them, so if you really are curious and don't want things spoiled, you can skip the parts where I say the bad things. This movie is labeled as like a journey of discovering the love an alternative family can present, but it's kind of more of straight people not understanding gay people and accidentally or on purpose doing their best to destroy everything a gay man has built in his family and anything that he has for happiness, and forcing him to suffer even more than he has already have. So I feel like watching it, the crowd was mostly like older Taiwanese straight couples, and watching it, I feel like they maybe weren't fully understanding what was going on to the main character, or weren't feeling the same emotions I was feeling, because like, oh god, the treatment that he gets in many of the scenes was like holy bananas. There's actually this scene that it's in the trailer a lot, or if you read any reviews, you hear it a lot, so this shouldn't be spoiler. But he's being questioned by police officers, and he does the whole speech of like, "Oh, if I was a woman, you wouldn't ask me why I stayed behind with the child and tried to take care of the family." And that is kind of true. Like, due to his alternative lifestyle, him being gay, everyone was giving him a lot of second degree, third degree interrogations of like, "Why are you doing this? This is super weird." Blah 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 blah. And it always happened like right after like an emotional part. This movie is just like a combination of sadness and fury because there's all these low lows and then some straight douchebag comes out of nowhere. It's like, "Oh, what? You're gay? I have these weird questions for you. I don't understand your lifestyle, so it makes me angry." So watching that, I was like tears of sadness and then like tears of anger.
It flamed, flames on the side of my face. Breathing, heaving breaths, heaving.
And yeah, oh my gosh, it was the best and the worst thing ever. Yet again, watching it through the eyes of living in the city where it's set is really cool. So Geelong is kind of a smaller city, but it's really old and it's kind of full of more like elderly, and most of the people here kind of want to leave and go to Taipei. It's not that far away, but Taiwan being kind of a smaller island, it feels really far for the people who live here. And when I moved here, everyone came up to me like, "Oh, you're going to the boonies, you're going to like the poor farmers, or like you're going to somewhere that's not really that civilized." It's pretty civilized, and if you watch the movie, you get to see like a lot of cool, like tall buildings. Like non-civilized places don't have such tall buildings. Like where I grew up, there were such tall buildings, so that's really cool. But I got to see like schools that I knew, streets that I went on. It actually, there's a scene where he's running, and I could have been imagining it because I know the layout so well, but I definitely felt like I saw my apartment in the background as he ran past on one of the bridges. When you're in Geelong, there's a main river in the downtown, and there is a bridge for each of the zodiacs. And he actually like he actually ran down one of the zodiac bridges that is really close to my house and that I walk on all the time. So I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool, I know this, wow, amazing." So I really liked that, and I kind of felt like a lot more involved in this movie than I was expecting to. This movie actually brought me in a lot because even though I'm not an older gay Taiwanese man who has an adopted child and all this stuff, and I'm not from Taiwan, I have a lot of similarities with a lot of things that are going on here, so I was really drawn in. I was not expecting to have such connection and such an emotional impact from this movie. So the basics of this movie is that Mr. Lin is the main character, and he is a gay man who was dating another man, and we know that he died. The boyfriend died, and for some reason he is to blame. We don't know why yet, but the mother, who he lives and takes care of with, is furious at him. She is also dying of diabetes. She's very sick, and they share a child. Well, they raise the child together, but mostly Mr. Lin does, a Yu, and that is kind of the main situation that's going on. You have already some layers of conflict because this woman's son died, and she blames the gay lover, who now is kind of in her debt and takes care of her as an apology. But there's also this closeness with him and the son, and we don't know why they're such close company and why he didn't leave after the son died. But that's the situation that's going on. This is kind of a slight spoiler, but a lot of the credits talk about this anyways because this is the main drama of the movie. But the mother dies, or Yu-Yo's grandmother dies eventually, and the dead boyfriend actually has a brother who has had some shady background, and we don't really know what's going on with him, but he comes back and he suggests to the police that Mr. Lin is the murderer. So the cops get involved, and it turns into this whole mystery of like, did Mr. Lin actually kill his mother? Did somebody else do it? Did she die? What's going on? So that's where the cops come in and cause conflict between Mr. Lin and Yu, who is the son of him. This is when I really start hating the straight people, because the estranged brother really hates, or maybe doesn't hate, but he seems to be very uncomfortable with the alternative lifestyle, or he uses words, or at least the English translation says abnormal, which is a serious friction between Mr. Lin, and really upsetting and sad to hear, and it made me break a little in the heart. And Mr. Lin, the actor Mr. Lin, was really good at being upset about this too. During some of the interrogations, the police officers also show very little regard for people being gay. They find a gay hookup app that Mr. Lin deleted, and they're like, "You're hiding something," and he responds with like his hookups. He's hiding his hookups from his son in case his son uses the phone. Children use their parents' phones like all the time here, and they're better at phones than I am, so that's understandable. He thinks that he would find them, and you do not want a small boy on Grindr, which I'm assuming he's using, or maybe Hornet or something. Hornet is maybe a little more popular than Grindr here. There is a concept with drugs though, so maybe it was Grindr, because Grindr is very drug heavy in Taiwan and in America. But yeah, so they go through this, and there's some awkward parts where they're asking, like, giving a list. Give me a list of all your hookups, which obviously they don't know gay people, because that would be a non-existent list. Most people probably can't remember like the faces of the person hooked up with, especially at Mr. Lin's age, but who knows. They eventually do a catfish for one of the hookups, who I feel really bad for, because he seems like a nice guy, and there's trouble that ensues for him, kind of. Some of the things I really liked about this movie is, even though it's incredibly bleak and depressing, it kind of captures a lot of interesting gay culture, which I was very surprised about. There's a scene where they flash back with Mr. Lin having intercourse, so there's a sex scene, which was gasp.
Lord of my damn, this is some scary shit.
Clenching. Everyone in the movie theater was very shocked. They show butt. That was exciting. Mr. Lin has a nice butt. Good job. It's kind of a very shocking gay sex scene, but it wasn't as gross as usually they are. It wasn't rapey. It was actually, even though it was kind of aggressive, it was strangely romantic. So it was Mr. Lin, and it was the hookup that the police officers chase, and it was kind of good. I liked it because the man Mr. Lin was with was very comforting. So they seem to have met before this, or they talked about what Mr. Lin's situation is. His loving boyfriend is dead, and he is sad, and there's kind of an emotional breakdown, but the hookup actually like comforts him, and that's kind of common in like gay culture. I've had like encounters where people kind of do a lot of like emotional healing and therapy, and I know of a lot of friends who also do that too. I'm not really sure how often that happens in the straight world, but it was very interesting to see that concept in a gay movie. It's not very common. Usually sex is dirty and awkward, but this one was really comforting, and there's even a scene at the end where they talk, and the hookup actually shows genuine affection for Mr. Lin and wants him to like feel better, and it was really nice, and I really admired that in the film director, that they put that in, and I kind of really connected to that, and that was really cool. Another thing that I personally was able to experience with this was the diabetes of the grandma. So my grandma also died of diabetes, and multiple people in my family have diabetes and have had serious troubles losing their limbs and things like that. So that's always been kind of a fear of mine. And so the fact that we're being shown with this like really, at times grotesque, living of diabetes and fear of diabetes, and then you also have the sad existence of the gay man. So Mr. Lin is the trope. He is the classic like sad, depressed gay man. His life is misery because of his life. He has more dimensions than that, but that's what's going on. So you have sad, depressed gay man, and then diabetes, which are both huge fears of mine. So watching this movie, it was kind of like piercing, and then like they had a child that was, that's always like the dream. So it's like, oh, here's a child, and like people are trying to take the child away. So it's like piercing. It was like almost like all the years of Queer as Folk in like 1 2 hour format. Like Mr. Lin has trouble with his boyfriend, and then he has trouble with his boyfriend and grandma, and then he gets the cops called on him, and then he gets his child taken away, and then it just keeps lasting, and then like, oh, maybe the cops cause trouble for his hookups and his job and this, and it's just too many things are happening. As we learn more information, as we learn more things about what's going on, towards the end it kind of feels, there's a couple scenes that feel like a little forced, like they didn't need to go the full Monty on all of it. So that kind of took me out of the story, because I was thinking, did this need to happen? Or you're just trying to raise the stakes too high now? And I wasn't too keen on that. There are some cute scenes, especially with the little boy. He does a little funny moments, which are very necessary for such sad topics. You know, it's been happening since Shakespeare. You need comedy. You need something to lighten the mood, because if it's just sad all the time, then it's just masochism and it's no longer entertainment. So this skirts the line. There's a lot of masochism, but it's presented in a really cool way. I really like the setting. I talked about this a lot in your name engraved herein, but the setting of Taiwan, the setting of Geelong especially, where I live, was super cool. You don't really learn too much history. This is a now piece. This is happening in this time. You're not learning the history of Taiwan. You're not really learning the customs of Taiwan, but you're seeing cool stuff. You're seeing classrooms, the Yoyu's classroom, which is kind of cool. But it's still really nice. It was for me, and I wonder if you see this, you can kind of see, like, you see inside houses and bedrooms and living styles and how it's the same and how it's different. And looking through it through a person maybe who doesn't know too much about where people live in Taiwan, it's kind of really cool to see. And this is a good movie, so the shots are great. It's interesting how the shots are too, because the movie's not happy, and a lot of the lighting and textures kind of feel almost like wet and heavy. Everything feels heavy in the movie. Everything feels like it's coated in something. So it kind of makes you know like what's happening. Like this is nothing is kind of okay. Everything is heavy, which I really enjoyed. I would definitely give this movie an 8 out of 10. It's a very well-made movie. The acting is great. The acting is so good. The shots are amazing. It's beautiful. Geelong is amazing. Come visit sometime. The food is great. We have an amazing night market. But it's still like, especially towards the end, it gets too depressing, and I need to look into see if it's actually made by a gay person at all, because it gets like too like ramp up. Alternative lifestyle is really upsetting to you. It's different. Tragedy. Sell tickets. Oscar. So that kind of killed it for me. But the acting is great. The child actor is really adorable, and the family feels was really well done. When you learn what actually happens, it kind of really gets to you. The grandma's acting is really good, but her concept and her kind of, it's really weird. It's not, I don't know if it's much of a spoiler, but she's like, she reminds me of my grandma when she was sick with diabetes, and she kind of, it's very strange. Like sometimes I feel like she's being manipulative, and other times I feel like she's actually in trouble. So it's really hard, this character, to really dig like what her true motives are. And also I'm paying attention to the subtitles. So there are subtitles from Mandarin to English. You miss so much context. Also, since I am not from Taiwan, how things are said and things, even just reading a text message doesn't really give you everything. So there's maybe things I missed, but just the wording that I read and what was happening with her and things that I have experienced in my life, I was like, wow, this woman is so nice and so sad, but also she's like kind of horrifically manipulative. And I'm really curious if that was the main point for Mr. Lin, his life. There's this other movie, it's a Korean movie where there's like car accident and the boy goes into a coma and the boyfriend has a connection with the mother, and it's this whole journey of the boyfriend and the mother fighting and growing a relationship as the boy's in a coma. And this kind of has that feel of just like kind of abject despair. I wasn't too keen on that ending either, and that maybe we'll say that for another time. But yeah, this one has just like servitude and just like they're trapped. It's sad.